The slap echoed louder than the school bell. Trays stopped clattering. Conversations died mid-sentence. In that split second, the entire cafeteria froze, hundreds of eyes turning toward the sound that sliced through the noise like a gunshot. Samantha Langford stood there, face flushed with fury, her hand still raised in the air, and across from her, the old janitor she'd just struck didn't move an inch. He didn't stagger, he didn't yell, he just stood completely still, staring at her like he'd seen this moment coming years ago. "You don't talk to me like that," she snapped, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You clean floors. You're nothing." Gasps, whispers. The boys behind her chuckled nervously, unsure if this was still a joke or something much, much bigger. A phone camera zoomed in. The girl filming whispered, "Yo, did she just slap him?" Someone else muttered, "Bro, she's done." But Samantha didn't hear any of it. She was too busy seething over the soda that had spilled across her shoes and pride. And Walter, the janitor, was too calm to be a victim. He didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He just looked her straight in the eyes and said, "You really don't know, do you?" That's when the tension shifted. A quiet rippled through the room, not the silence of fear, but of realization. Everyone watching sensed it. This wasn't just some grumpy janitor. Something was off. His voice wasn't defensive. His stillness wasn't fear. It was precision, like a man who had waited for this moment, not to react, but to reveal. And Samantha? She had no idea who she'd just laid hands on. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. Walter didn't speak again that day. After the slap, the principal arrived, the students scattered, and Samantha was whisked away in a whirlwind of excuses. It was a misunderstanding. She's under stress. Let's not escalate. Walter just nodded silently, holding a cold compress against his jaw like the pain wasn't even worth reacting to. He didn't argue. He didn't file a complaint. He signed the incident form with calm hands and walked right back to his mop bucket like nothing had happened. But when he left the school that afternoon, well, after the last bell rang and the halls had emptied, he didn't head home like the others. He walked instead. Past the row of trees by the parking lot, past the corner store where kids bought energy drinks and skipped class. He moved like a shadow. Unnoticed, unbothered, just another janitor off the clock. Only he didn't go to an apartment. He went to a building no one expected. The gate recognized him before he even touched it. A hidden scanner blinked green as he stepped inside a quiet brownstone office. The receptionist stood as soon as she saw him. "Evening, Mr. Cole," she said with a respectful nod. "Conference rooms prepped." Walter gave a faint smile and continued down the marble hall toward a glass-walled boardroom. Inside, 4 men in suits rose from their seats. No one spoke until he sat down. "We saw the footage," one of them said finally. "Do you want to release a statement?" Walter shook his head. "Not yet." They nodded, understanding. Because to them, Walter wasn't just a janitor. He was the founder and silent owner of Cole Property Group, the firm that held ownership over more than a dozen educational buildings across the county, including Langford Memorial High. He'd bought the school 6 years ago under a subsidiary name, renovated it, protected it, funded scholarships from the shadows. And when the board asked why he refused to place his name on any plaque, he simply said, "I don't need credit. I need control." Control didn't mean screaming. It meant standing in a place where you could watch everything. And wait he had. When Walter returned home that night, he didn't pour a drink or slam doors. He didn't need to. Instead, he sat at his small kitchen table, unfolded the school map he helped design, and stared at the corner labeled East Wing Renovation, a wing Samantha's father had tried to block until Walter paid for it himself. The same father who now sat on the school's board of trustees. Walter smiled, not with bitterness but with knowing. Because this wasn't just about a slap, it was about timing. And Walter Cole never missed his moment. The next morning, the tension in the school hallways was almost suffocating. Everyone had seen the video by now. It was already viral on TikTok, racking up comments like wildfire. "She slapped a janitor?" turned into, "Yo, that janitor didn't even react. That man's different." Students whispered in clusters, glancing over their shoulders as if Walter might appear around any corner. But he didn't. He was off that day. And somehow, that unsettled them. More. In the principal's office, chaos brewed behind a closed door. Mr. Whitaker, usually composed, was pacing. Samantha sat next to her father, George Langford, a man who walked like every room belonged to him. A developer, a donor, and a board trustee. He was used to problems going away with two things: influence and intimidation. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he told the principal, waving his hand like he was swatting a fly. "She overreacted. He's a janitor. They do this kind of thing for attention." Principal Whitaker wiped his forehead. "The issue isn't just the slap, George. It's the video, the tone, the way she spoke to him. It's not good." George leaned forward. "Then get ahead of it. Issue a statement, suspend him if you need to. That's what you're paid." "For?" Whitaker flinched. "You don't get it," he said quietly. "I don't think you know who he is." George laughed. "He's a mop boy." But Whitaker didn't laugh. At that exact moment, Walter was sitting in a private conference room downtown, not at Cole Property Group's main headquarters, but at the legal office attached to their school asset management branch. No suit, no entourage, just him, a black folder, and a quiet smile. He made a single phone call. "Activate Clause 13, he said calmly. "Full review. I want board accountability, equity audit, and all renovation history pulled within 48 hours. And have Ms. Reyes call the press." That was all. By that afternoon, the school board had received a formal request from Cole Property Holdings for an emergency compliance audit. Half the staff didn't even realize the name. They'd heard whispers. Some investment group that bought the school in a rescue deal years ago. No one connected the dots until a woman in a gray suit stepped into the office holding a legal binder with one name on the front: Walter J. Cole. Owner, architect, controlling authority on all matters of conduct, construction, and board partnership. Samantha's father got the call mid-meeting. His assistant's voice was shaky. "Sir, the janitor, apparently owns the building." He dropped his pen. For the first time, George Langford didn't have a word to say. The boardroom's atmosphere was tense, the air thick with anticipation. George Langford sat at the head of the table, his usual confidence replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. The murmurs around the room ceased as the door opened, revealing Walter Cole. He entered with a calm demeanor, his presence commanding attention. Dressed in a tailored suit, he exuded an authority that contrasted sharply with the janitor's uniform everyone associated him with. Walter approached the table, placing a folder in front of George. "Mr. Langford," he began, his voice steady, "inside this folder are documents detailing the ownership and management of this institution." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "You'll find that Cole Property Holdings has been the sole proprietor of this establishment for the past 6 years." A hush fell over the room. George's hands trembled slightly as he opened the folder, scanning the contents. The color drained from his face as realization dawned. The man he had dismissed, the janitor he had deemed insignificant, was, in fact, the owner of the very building they sat in. Walter continued, "I've remained in the background, ensuring the school's operations ran smoothly. However, recent events have necessitated a more hands-on approach." He turned to the rest of the board members, their expressions a mix of shock and embarrassment. "It's imperative that we address the underlying issues that have come to light." The room remained silent, the weight of the revelation pressing down on everyone present. Walter's gaze swept across the table, meeting each member's eyes. "This isn't about retribution," he said. "It's about accountability and ensuring that such incidents don't recur." As he concluded, Walter gathered his belongings, preparing to leave. He paused at the doorway, turning back to the room. "Change starts with recognition," he stated. "Let's ensure we recognize the value in every individual, regardless of their role." With that, he exited, leaving the board members to grapple with the implications of his words. News doesn't take long to travel in a high school, especially when it's explosive. By third period the next day, every hallway had a single name on repeat: Walter. No one called him the janitor anymore. Phones buzzed with reposts of the original slap video, now edited side by side with screenshots of legal documents, property ownership records, and a photo of Walter in a suit stepping out of a luxury sedan. A girl in the art hall whispered, "He owns the school?" While a group of boys near the lockers replayed the moment he walked into the boardroom like a ghost from a war no one knew they were in. In the teacher's lounge, it was even worse. One by one, staff who had dismissed Walter, ignored him in staff meetings, or asked him to grab coffee during faculty workdays, now sat silent, avoiding each other's eyes. Principal Whitaker, after receiving the second formal email from Cole Property Holdings, knew this wasn't just a PR crisis, it was a reckoning, and he could feel it happening in real time. Samantha didn't show up to school that day. Her father had tried to contain the fire by releasing a short press statement through a family spokesperson. "We are deeply sorry for the misunderstanding and hope to resolve the issue respectfully." But it was too late. By then, a video of George Langford yelling at Walter in a previous board meeting had surfaced. Unlisted, but saved by a student journalist who had always felt something off. It showed Walter calmly suggesting equity-based funding for underprivileged students, and George cutting him off, saying, "You don't make those decisions, you just clean what we build." The students didn't need permission to respond. Handmade sign appeared taped to Walter's janitor closet that read, "Realist boss in the building." Another one outside the cafeteria said, "Walter's house. We're just learning in it." One teacher caught a group of seniors printing Cole Academy stickers and putting them over school plaques. But Walter, he just kept showing up. He arrived the next day at 6:45 a.m., same uniform, same slow walk through the halls. Only this time, as he passed, kids stepped aside. Teachers said, "Good morning," like they meant it. And when he reached the hallway where the slap had happened, he paused, not to relive it, but to notice something. The floor had been cleaned. Not by him. Someone else had quietly finished his job. He nodded once and moved on. The school gym wasn't built for press conferences, but that day it held a crowd far bigger than any basketball game ever had. Foldable chairs filled the court, camera tripods lined the back, and murmurs rippled like distant thunder. Walter hadn't asked for the spotlight. He never needed it. But when the school board extended an open invitation for him to speak, publicly, officially, he didn't say no. Not because he wanted to be heard, but because too many people had grown up thinking their silence would never matter. He walked to the center of the gym with the same steady pace he used in the hallways. No suit. No mic taped to his face. Just Walter. Dark blue janitor uniform clean-pressed, shoulders tall and eyes calm. As he approached the podium, the crowd leaned in. Phones rose. Samantha's father sat stiffly near the side, the only man in the room who looked like he wanted to disappear. The school principal stood behind Walter, hands folded, eyes lowered. Even the mayor had shown up quietly, taking a seat in the far corner. Walter adjusted the mic. He didn't clear his throat, didn't look down at notes. He just began. "I've mopped these floors for 6 years," he said, voice even, low and full. "Not because I had to, but because I chose to." A hush fell, deeper than silence. I wanted to be close enough to see what no one else does. The cracks in the system don't always start at the top. They start when we assume someone's worth by what they're wearing, or where they stand when you first meet them. Paused. No one moved. "When that girl hit me, I wasn't angry," he continued. "I've been through worse. I've worn uniforms she'll never see. But what shook me wasn't her hand. It was how many people in this building watched it happen and stayed quiet." Someone in the crowd exhaled. The tension turned emotional. So I stayed quiet, too, but not to protect her. I was waiting, because silence, when used right, becomes power. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a letter, unfolding it carefully. "Starting this fall," he said, "I'm creating a full scholarship fund for students who have faced discrimination, harassment, or exclusion, here or anywhere else." Applause began, soft but building. "We're naming it after my wife, because she taught me that change doesn't begin when people apologize. It begins when they take responsibility." He looked over at George Langford, just briefly, and then back at the students. "I'm not going to fire anyone. I'm not pressing charges. I'm not suing the board. I'm building something better." And just like that, Walter stepped away from the mic. No mic drop, just purpose. Days passed, then a week. The school slowly returned to its usual rhythm. Bells ringing, students gossiping, lockers slamming. But something had shifted. Not in how the floors looked or how the announcements sounded. No, it was deeper. A quiet shift in how people walked the halls. How teachers glanced at the janitor closet with just a second longer of thought. How students made space, not because of fear, but respect. Walter never changed his uniform. He still swept the same corners, still nodded to the front office lady, still sat on the same bench during lunch breaks under the old maple tree by the east wing. The only difference now was, people saw him, not through the lens of a job title, or a salary, or a social ladder. They saw him because now they knew. And yet, Walter never once mentioned what happened again. It was a Friday afternoon when he took a slow walk through the halls just before final bell. Classrooms buzzed faintly. kids were packing up early. In the guidance counselor's office, someone had pinned a printed quote on the bulletin board: "Respect is silent. So is real power." W.C. Walter raised an eyebrow when he saw it, then smiled just a little. Someone had heard him, even without him saying much. Out in the parking lot, students shuffled toward buses. One girl, maybe a sophomore, stopped him by the garden fence. "Mr. Cole?" she asked nervously. He looked at her gently. "I just wanted to say, my brother saw the video. He doesn't even go to school here, but he said it was the first time he saw someone win without yelling." Walter nodded. "It's not about winning," he said quietly. "It's about making sure they don't forget what losing feels like." Later, that night, he sat alone on his porch. The neighborhood was quiet. Porch lights flickered on, one by one. The same town that once looked through him now looked toward him. He sipped his tea, watching the sky shift from dusk to violet. His phone buzzed with dozens of messages he never replied to. His name had trended on local news. But he didn't speak to reporters. Not because he couldn't, but because he didn't have to. Because legacy doesn't shout. It walks, and walks steady. He placed his cup down, folded his hands, and whispered to himself more than anyone else. It's always the quiet ones they never see coming, and that's the mistake they don't get to make twice. If you've ever been overlooked, disrespected, or judged by the clothes you wear or the name they couldn't pronounce, drop your city below. Tap like if you believe silence isn't weakness. It's preparation, and follow for more stories where the underestimated become unforgettable.